On 5 News, Britain's social care crisis. Charities say the system is facing complete collapse, with more than 1 million vulnerable people not receiving even basic levels of care.
People are struggling to get out of bed, dress themselves, eat and use the toilet on their own, but they're not getting any support in doing so either, so they're actually being left without care.
Also this evening, more arrests over the mysterious death of the half-brother of North Korea's dictator. Wildfires in New Zealand forced more than 1,000 people to flee their homes. How, if you're not getting enough of this and too much of this, you might need supplements. And rewriting the rulebook on queuing, how this great British habit just got a bit more complicated.
What is one of your worst queuing situations?
Queuing for food, definitely, if you're hungry.
When you get hangry?
Yes. Angry and hangry.
I like that.
Yes.
I've done that before, that's good.
Yeah.
Welcome to 5 News, I'm Danny Sinha. Social care for the elderly in England is on the verge of complete collapse. That's the stark warning tonight from a leading charity. As many as 1.2 million people, many of them extremely vulnerable, are not receiving even basic help with tasks such as getting out of bed, dressing and even eating. And with an ageing population, campaigners warn the situation is only going to get worse unless the government steps in. Our political editor, Andy Bell, reports.
Peter and Amy Gardner are having a short break in a respite home. Well, they deserve it. They've just sold their family home and had to move to sheltered accommodation. At the moment, Amy is looking after Peter in the mornings.
Peter up and dressing him and then getting breakfast ready.
So if you had a bit more help then, that would be...
Yeah, I'll just do the breakfast and the tablets.
They're hoping soon to have more help in the morning, but with less money available, even a small amount of savings means they'll have to pay for the care themselves.
Well, I think it's wrong because some people are getting it and some people ain't, and it depends on what savings they've got. And if you've got any savings, then you don't get it paid for.
B is also having a break. At home, she used to get 3.5 hours care a day to help with her chronic pain and blackouts. Essex Social Services have now cut that to 2 hours.
No explanation really given. Just don't need it, got a husband, so get on with it basically.
And what did you think of that?
Not a lot.
Today's report says 1.2 million elderly people are not getting the help they need. That's up nearly 50% on the 2010 figure. Age UK says if nothing's done, we could be looking at a complete collapse in social care.
It affects all of us, our families. We all know an older person or we are older ourselves. So what does that mean for our futures? So I think it's a really important exercise in putting the government in the spotlight and saying we need to do something about this.
The government has said local authorities can put an extra 6% on the council tax over the next 3 years to pay for this. Not enough, say the councils, and they say it'll make the gap worse between rich and poor areas.
We have councils that have a good tax base and can raise a reasonable amount, and we have other councils who have a very low tax base because their population is low housing, a lot of people who are tax exempt, and they're actually the ones who have the greatest need.
Amy and Peter Gardner didn't ask for any help until they had to. The country now has to decide how it's going to provide the help for the growing number who will need it.
Well, Andy is in Westminster for us and some strong warnings there. What's been the government's response?
Well, Danny, the government will not say they have a long-term solution to this. There is a review going on through the Cabinet Office. I suspect when that review is concluded, we will hear a call to have a cross-party consensus on how social care for the elderly is going to be funded into the future. But I think we'd be kidding ourselves if that is not going to involve extra taxation to help solve that problem. That, though, is much further down the road in terms of the immediacy of what many people are calling a crisis. The Local Government Association is saying they need £1.3 billion extra this year to solve this year's problem. Perhaps we may see some answer to that in the budget which is due next month.
Andy, thank you very much. New plans have been unveiled to help better protect children from sexual abuse. It comes after police, social workers and politicians were strongly criticised in the wake of the Rochdale and Rotherham scandals, where dozens of girls as young as 12 were repeatedly raped and assaulted by gangs of men. One of the victims has told 5 News she welcomes the move, but warned that more needs to be done. Olivia Kinsley reports.
Rotherham in South Yorkshire is a town that's trying to move on from an appalling legacy of abuse, cover-ups and failing hundreds of vulnerable children. Jessica, not her real name, was one of them.
I was 14 when I met my main abuser. He mentally, sexually and physically abused me. I was made pregnant twice. My family put me into care hoping that it'd keep me safe and protect me, as I kept running off from home and I was missing all the time. That backfired, and the authorities said that as long as I met him at the top of the street and was back by 10, I could have contact with him.
The government promised to learn lessons from Rotherham and other towns and cities where there was widespread abuse. Looking around a counselling centre in Manchester, the Home Secretary announced £40 million of funding for charities, victims and a new centre of expertise which will help train police, teachers and social workers to spot and stop abuse.
These are children who've been victims of sexual exploitation, and making sure that we have the resources and the information to really tackle this dreadful scourge. Children should not have to grow up in a world where they fear exploitation.
We really welcome this government commitment to tackling child sexual exploitation and child sexual abuse, but there is much more still to be done. For example, there remains still a flaw in the law where it remains legal for an adult to send a sexual message to a child. This legislation received royal assent back in March of 2015, but it's still not on the statute book.
Jessica welcomes the funding but fears this won't solve the problem for the communities that need help the most.
Again, it's important that they need to be involving the survivors in the decisions that are being made. They need to be spreading it out more across the UK. This doesn't just happen in certain areas, you know, it's not just in Rotherham or London or Manchester, it's in every town, every city.
All over the country for so many years, child abuse was kept in the shadows. To prevent it in future, stories like Jessica's have to be heard. Olivia Kinsley, 5 News.
A teenage girl has denied the murder of 7-year-old Katie Ruff. The 15-year-old, who can't be named for legal reasons, appeared before Leeds Crown Court via video link. Katie was found with serious injuries to her neck and chest in a playing field in York last month, but later died in hospital. Talks to resolve the Southern Railway dispute over driver-only trains have collapsed after members of the drivers' union rejected a deal. The RMT union are set to stage a 24-hour strike next Wednesday. Police in Malaysia have arrested a third person in connection with the alleged assassination of Kim Jong-nam, the estranged half-brother of North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. Well, it's thought he was killed using a fast-acting poison at Kuala Lumpur airport on Monday. US sources say they believe North Korean assassins were responsible. Julian Drucker has more.
North Korea certainly knows how to stage a spectacular. But did the secretive state organise an execution too? This display was held to mark what would have been the 75th birthday of former leader Kim Jong-il, paying his respects in the mausoleum where his father is interred, Kim Jong-un. A deep bow, but a more recent death is overhanging the dynasty. He's now suspected of ordering the assassination of his half-brother. Malaysian authorities now say the man reportedly poisoned earlier this week was Kim Jong-nam. This was him in China in 2009. He'd been living in exile for years and was carrying a passport with the name Kim Chol. The Deputy Prime Minister said DNA tests had confirmed his identity.
I think after all the police and medical procedures is completed, then we may release the body to the next of kin and through embassy.
The woman wearing the yellow top with the uncovered head is believed to be one of the murder suspects. Here she was being escorted to a police station. But is she the mystery woman seen in these CCTV images from Kuala Lumpur airport? 2 women are believed to have carried out the killing. A man, thought to be the boyfriend of one of them, has also been arrested. But as investigators piece together the details, Kim Young-nam's body rests in this Malaysian morgue. North Korea had objected to post-mortem examinations, but officials here went ahead with it. They are yet to reveal if indeed he was poisoned. Julian Drucker, 5 News.
Hundreds of firefighters are still battling a huge wildfire that's burning worryingly close to the New Zealand city of Christchurch. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated from the area, with serious concerns over homes that lie in its path. Simon Vigar reports.
Wildfires burning out of control in New Zealand. 400 homes in Christchurch have been evacuated by police, with hundreds more people deciding to leave as a precaution. The fires have claimed one life, a decorated army pilot whose helicopter crashed while he fought the blaze. At least 11 homes have been destroyed, with hundreds more still at risk.
It is going to take weeks because it is going to smoulder. There will be outbreaks from time to time. The wind could change while we're speaking, and that would make a difference.
The military has been deployed to help the 130 firefighters tackle the blaze. It spread almost 8 square miles and a state of emergency has been declared. 2 separate fires have merged into this, and that is why there's suspicion of arson, because the 2 fires began so close to one another. Local people have set up a Facebook group offering rooms to those who've had to evacuate from their homes. The people of Christchurch are familiar with natural disasters. In 2011, 185 people were killed in a massive earthquake that destroyed much of the city. Visiting the scene of the fires, the country's Prime Minister praised the way the community has banded together once again.
There's a whole lot of people here who've been traumatised by the events, some who've lost their homes, many who've been evacuated. And this is a community that knows how to stick together when things are difficult.
Investigators are trying to work out the cause of the fire. Arson is not being ruled out. But for now, the main focus is on trying to get the wildfire under control. Simon Vigar, 5 News.
Coming up on 5 News. Should we all be taking vitamin D tablets to ward off colds? And the science to queuing. Find out how it should be done. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. Their benefits have long been debated, but new research has found that vitamin D supplements can in fact help stave off colds and flu. Well, experts say more than 3 million people across the UK could in fact avoid infections by taking tablets of the so-called sunshine vitamin, particularly during winter. Well, Ruth Liptrot has been finding out more.
Vitamin D has long been known as the sunshine vitamin, good for our bone and muscle health. So we know that getting enough of it can make us feel like this. And that not getting enough of it during the darker months can make us feel like this. But the latest research goes even further, saying that it helps to protect us from coughs and colds too. Public Health England say we should be getting 10 micrograms of vitamin D a day, but in winter most of us don't. But according to the new research, getting the required amount would prevent 3 million cases of acute respiratory infection a year. That's a lot less nose blowing.
So what we found is that in the population as a whole, taking vitamin D reduces your risk of having an acute respiratory infection, that's a cold, flu, cough, sore throat, by around 10%. But if you're in one of the group who have low baseline vitamin D levels, you've got vitamin D deficiency, then the risk reduction is 50%. That's halving your risk of having such an infection.
So how much of it are you lot getting, and do you know why you need it? Do you take vitamin D?
No.
Do you take vitamin D?
Yes, of course, yes.
What have you got against vitamin D?
Oh, I have nothing against vitamin D at all. I just hadn't thought about it.
Why?
Because apparently it's good for the immune system.
Correct! Did you know, though, that vitamin D can help prevent stuff like colds and the flu, and we'd all be a lot less sick if we all took it?
I don't get colds. Oh, excuse me.
In some countries, foods like bread and milk are deliberately fortified with vitamin D. Here you can find it in egg yolks, oily fish like mackerel or salmon, cheese, fortified orange juice, beef liver and soy milk. Just make sure you're getting it from somewhere so you feel less like this and more like this. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Bristol University has been evacuated after a chemistry student accidentally made the same explosive that was used in the Paris terror attacks. Police, fire service and bomb disposal experts were all called to the lab after the incident, with a controlled explosion being carried out. Luckily, no one was injured. Footage has been released of a high-speed car chase through the streets of Brisbane in Australia. Police helicopters tracked the stolen vehicle through the city before the driver attempted to escape on foot. Well, he was eventually caught. If you want to see how, do check out our Facebook page to see the dramatic climax. Just search for C5 News. Now it's the world's oldest endurance race that tests the resilience of its drivers over 24 gruelling hours. Now, though, a team of injured soldiers are hoping to qualify as the first team of all disabled drivers at Le Mans. Warren Nettleford has been to meet the Inspirational veterans.
This is no ordinary car, but it's these 4 men who'll soon sit behind the wheel who have truly extraordinary stories. Today marks the beginning of their journey towards racing at the pinnacle of motorsport in the Le Mans 24-hour race. A battle of endurance, determination and skill. These servicemen all suffered serious injuries while serving in the armed forces and have already demonstrated these traits.
It's every little boy's dream. Who wouldn't want to race on Le Mans, you know what I mean? It's just, yeah, I'll be happy to do that any day.
24-year-old Andy Searle lost both his legs, his right hip and 2 fingers after being hit by an improvised explosive device in Afghanistan.
For me, I'm really bad at amputations, and I can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it at the end of the day. You've got to work out how you can do it.
Car down the inside into Brooklands corner.
To gain experience, Team Brit will slowly move up the motorsport ranks. Firstly, racing in the Fun Cup Championship against able-bodied drivers, before racing at Le Mans in 2020 as the first record-breaking disabled team.
So the whole steering wheel is brand new. This steering wheel is actually the only one in the world. And so here we've got an electronic throttle and an electronic brake. We've also got electronic clutch here.
At almost 110 miles an hour, this car is pretty quick, but their eventual Le Mans car will be almost twice as fast. After being shot multiple times on the battlefield, Tony was paralysed from the waist down, and Jimmy has a paralysed left foot. They're both hoping their recoveries can inspire others.
To be asked to step up to Team Brit, it helps round off my recovery, but I'm still on my recovery process with this because it's also helped the mental health side of things.
For these men, the hard work has well and truly begun. But after previous challenges, they're confident of success. Warren Nettleford, 5 News.
And finally, how much time do you spend queuing? Do you have a good look around supermarket checkouts before choosing the right one? Well, us Brits may be famed for our love of queuing, but researchers have found there's actually a real science to it. And as Minnie Stevenson's been finding out, to truly master the art of the queue, you need to know the rules.
Wartime queues, which fast became a feature of the British way of life, are about to become a memory.
Britain's inherent love of queuing, a long-standing tradition. Throughout history, we have mostly formed an orderly queue, whether it's for Wimbledon or a bargain.
But could our patience for waiting around be waning? Well, it turns out that clever academics have in fact been studying the art of queuing. Yes, there is such a thing. And we haven't just been idly standing around like this in an orderly fashion for generations for no reason. There is, in fact, a method to all of this. And it turns out that 6 is the magic number.
Yes, researchers found that on average we'll wait for 6 minutes or less in a queue before giving up in frustration. Well, you'll never get that time back. And people are unlikely to join a queue that has more than, you guessed it, 6 people in it. And keeping with the theme, 6 inches in between queuers is the minimum amount of personal space needed to avoid stress. So now it's time to consult our esteemed panel of patient queuers outside the Science Museum.
In life, do you really not like queuing for?
Hate queuing for theme parks.
Really? Why?
Because you're queuing longer for like an hour and then you're only on the ride for like a minute or two.
And you can see the ride right in front of you?
Yeah.
And you just can't get on it?
Uh-huh.
So is it frustrating?
Yeah.
Queuing for food, definitely, if you're hungry.
When you get hangry?
Angry and hungry, yes.
If you're at the front of the line and then someone just pushes in and then you're really angry because it's something important.
It happens all the time?
Yeah.
Do you get really annoyed?
Yeah.
That queue?
We don't want to do that.
I didn't realise it was that long.
Will it ever end?
And if you haven't got time to hang around, I can sum up that the research tells us our tempers get short when the queues get long. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Well, on 5 News tonight at 6:30, we will actually be talking more about queuing and we want to hear from you. What's the longest time you've spent waiting in line and what was it for? Do get in touch with us via our Facebook page. Let us know what it is about queuing that really gets your blood boiling. Also, as a film is released about the Boston Marathon bombings, I'll be speaking to one of the police officers involved in the manhunt about the moment he came face to face with one of the attackers. Well, Claire Nazir has the weather next. I'll see you in an hour's time, just at 6:30. From all the team, though, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye for now.